Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I make my ching ching. So these are the ingredients I'll be using for the ching ching. I have some water, some oil, I have my nutmeg, I have my butter, I have salt, I have egg, I have sugar, I have baking powder, then I have the flour, all-purpose flour. So I'll be going straight into the process. So now I'm just going ahead to use my measuring cup, and I'm just shifting my flour. Always make sure to do this step, guys, because at times you might have some little particles in the flour. So it's always good to shift your flour before you go into making the chin chin. So I use 6 cups of flour for this process, and I'm going to be using 1 cup of sugar. But 1 cup of sugar is a lot, guys. If you don't like a lot of sweetness, I will prefer you use half cup of sugar, because when I use this one, I noticed it was a little bit sweet. So I'll advise that you use half cup of sugar if for 6 cups of flour if you don't want a lot of sweetness. So I'm just going ahead to add my nutmeg, and I'll be grating the nutmeg. I'm just going to use my grater, and I'm just going to grate the nutmeg. So for this process, I need 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. So I'm just going to use this is half teaspoon. So I'm going to measure 2 of these spoons to make 1 teaspoon. So this is the first measurement. Then I'm just going to use the remaining nutmeg. So before I did that, I used my salt, and that was 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You want to use half teaspoon of salt. So here is the remaining nutmeg that I'm using, half and half, which makes 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. So I use half teaspoon of salt. So now I'm going in with my baking powder, and I'm going to be using 1.5 teaspoon of salt. So I'll be using three of these things. It's half. I'm going to be using 3 to give me 1.5 teaspoon of baking soda. So I'm just going to add everything into the flour. So this is the third spoon, making it 1.5 teaspoon of baking powder. So I'm just going ahead to properly mix everything together. So I'm mixing this while it's still dry. You don't want to add water at this point. You just want to go ahead and you mix while it's still dry. So I'm just going ahead to break my eggs and beat the eggs. So I'll be using 3 eggs for this process. So this is my second egg, and I'll be going ahead to add the last egg. Guys, don't forget we are using 6 cups of flour. So all this measurement is measurement for 6 cups of flour. So I'm just going ahead to properly beat my egg. You see my egg is now ready. Then I'll just go ahead to create a hole in the middle, and I'll just pour my egg in there. Then I'll go ahead to add my butter. So I got this butter from No Free, and I'm using the unsalted butter, guys. This is the unsalted butter because I already added salt into my flour, so I don't need any extra flour. So that's why I'm using the unsalted butter. So I'm just going ahead to be using 1 measuring cup of butter. So guys, if you're not too sure, you can go ahead and you melt your butter in the microwave. Then you can measure it 1 cup before you pour it into the mixture. So I'm just going to measure mine like that. Then I add it in there. Then I'll just go ahead and give it a proper mix. I'm going to make sure I mix the egg and the butter into the flour properly. So I'm just going to keep mixing and mixing to my satisfied desire. So I was just using both hands at this point. So guys, I'm using 3.5 cup of water, and I'll be using 2 cups in this process. But guys, always make sure to Always put little quantities, then you mix. If it's not okay, you go ahead and you add. As you can see, I put just half of the water. So I went ahead and mixed, and I noticed that I needed more. Then I finished the remaining half, and I still needed more water. So I took another cup of water and I poured half. I mixed, and it was still somehow strong. Then I added water again. So guys, as you can see, I'm adding my water bit by bit because you don't want your mixture to be soft. So guys, this is lemon. I didn't have orange at home. I always like to add the peels of orange because it adds a good flavor to my chin chin. So I didn't have orange at home. I just went ahead to use some lemon peels. I was supposed to add this before I mix, but because I forgot, that's why I'm adding and I'm mixing now for the second time. And as you can see, my mixture is, this is the mixture we are going for, not too soft, not too strong, so you don't see any sticky on my hands. As you can see, I was giving taste on my hands and there was no sticky. So you don't want your flour to be soft, because when it's soft, it's going to be sticky on your hands, and it's also going to be sticky on your chopping board, and we don't want that. So right now my mixture is ready. I'm just going ahead to cover my mixture, and I'll be putting it in my oven because I want to put it in a warm environment. So I'll just be putting it in my oven. So this is my flour. I left my flour for 20 minutes in the oven, and as you can see, it it's giving a little bit of rise because we want the flour to rise. So now my flour, I just have to go ahead to start with the rolling process. So I'm using my chopping board and I'm just going to roll that. I want to properly roll because I want it to be flat and smooth. As you can see, I keep rolling and rolling until I get the desired flat and smoothness. Then I'll just go ahead to use my knife and I'm cutting the sides. I'm just taking the sides out. Then I'm going to cut them into little pieces. So guys, I noticed that the knife was not the best choice. The knife was a little bit stressful, so I had to go ahead and I used my pizza cutter. So this is my pizza cutter. I'm just going to use it to cut the dough because the pizza cutter was so easy and faster. So I'll just be using that to cut my dough. And guys, as you can see, because my mixture is not soft, as I'm cutting my dough, everything cuts properly. You don't see any stickiness on the board or on my hands. And it's not like really, you don't see them together. And each time you think that your flour is difficult to separate, always use a little bit of dry flour. You don't want to use a lot of dry flour, because if you use a lot of dry flour, it's going to foam in the oil while you're frying. So just always make sure to use a little bit of dry flour and you sprinkle on the chin chin dough, just so it can help separate the little slices I'm doing. So now I'm just going to put that in the tray. Always make sure to put it in a large tray because you want enough space, because if it's too tight, it's going to be sweating and like getting soft, and when you're frying, it's going to be like really foam. The oil is going to be foaming and foaming. So now I'm just going ahead with the next dough. So I'm just using my pizza cutter to cut all around, and I'm taking that out, and I'll go ahead to cut this in little pieces. As you can see, the pizza cutter is so fast and easy, guys, like really faster and easy. So because this was a little bit hard, I just had to add a little bit of flour. You see, when you add the flour, it's easier for the chin chin slices to like separate itself. So that's why we are using the dry flour, so that the chin chin pieces will be able to separate itself and not join, like not stick together. So right now I'm just going to be making different styles for my chin chin. I just want to give them like different styles. You see, each time I want to separate my chin chin, I just go ahead and I add a little bit of dry flour so that it will be easy for me to separate them and it won't stick together. So now I'm going to do a different method. I'm just going to create a hole in the middle, then I just flip the other dough inside of the hole. I like this style. This style is difficult to do, but I like it because it makes the ching ching to rise. When you fry it, you see that the ching ching rises even much more better. So here I'm just going to cut like long pieces. This is another design I'm doing for my ching ching, just cutting them like the long pieces. I'm just adding flour in there because you know when you keep your ching ching, the environment is heating up, so the ching ching starts getting soft. So I'm just putting in my flour, just a little bit of flour because I want it to harden up the dough. You don't want to put a lot of flour because it's going to foam in the oil, which is not a good thing. So I'm just cutting them into little long pieces. So now I'm done cutting my ching ching. So this is how the ching ching looks before I'll go into fries. Using my canola oil and I'll be pouring it in the pot. Then I'm going to let the oil heat up. Then I'm just going to throw 1 or 2 halves of ching ching in there to see if my oil is properly hot. So now that my oil is hot, I'm just going ahead to fry my ching ching. And guys, the frying, this process is very important. Always make sure you put very little ching ching in the oil, because if you put a lot of ching ching in the oil, it's going to soak the oil. The ching ching is going to soak the oil and it becomes so soft. So always make sure to put just little quantities in the oil, fry, then you put the next till everything is gone, because if you put a lot of the chin chin in the oil, it's going to soak the oil and your chin chin will be so soft. So this is my final chin chin, guys. Look at how yummy this chin chin looks, and it tastes so good and rich, guys. The chin chin is crunchy, everything is perfect, the mixture was perfect, just that the sugar was a little more sweet. I don't like a lot of sweet stuff, so the sugar was somehow sweet. So if you watch up to this point, guys, I say a very big thank you, and please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so that whenever I drop a video, you'll be the first to get a notification.